Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. So I wanted to take a moment to thank you all for joining us for today's Entuity live demo webinar. My name is John Regan. I'm the product marketing manager for Entuity software, and I'll be acting as your host today. Before we get started, I just wanted to address a few housekeeping items. If at all throughout the webinar today you have a question that you would like to have addressed by our subject matter expert that's joining us, feel free to drop that in the Q&A thread here in Teams. And we're going to go ahead and get started with our live demo of Entuity software. Today, we are joined by the excellent Keith Dubé. He is one of our directors of the solutions architect team here for Entuity software. So we're very fortunate to have him joining us today and leading the demo. So we'll hear from Keith here shortly. But when we talk to many IT operations teams, we commonly hear of challenges that they're experiencing. These challenges can often be seen on the delivery side of IT, from network availability to end user experiences, team productivity, um, as well as on the administrative side. We also have some, some technical difficulties here. We can also see these on the administrative side, some of the challenges that the teams often face, including keeping costs down, making sure that there's minimal downtime, and then of course managing the complexity of IT environments. And then that final set there is the side of visibility, making sure that assets are discoverable in the environment and that there's visibility into the data that matters most to these IT teams. With Entuity software, we feel that you can mitigate, if not resolve, many of these challenges through the monitoring, visualization, and management of your IT estate. Again, today's demo is going to be a 30,000-foot overview of Entuity software, including some of its features, as well as how it can assist you in managing your IT estate. Now, last slide here before we get into the demo. One of the points that we wanted to address from the start is regarding integrations. Many of you may be thinking, okay, Entuity sounds good after this webinar, but is it just going to be another tool that my team will be responsible for managing and overseeing? Entuity can integrate with many of the systems that you likely already have in place. And then again, these integrations allow you to enable a faster event processing, eliminating the duplication of managing separate data in different locations, as well as achieving a faster mean time to resolution, and then increasing automation, giving your staff the availability for more time to focus on some tasks that are truly important to your team. So I'll go ahead and stop sharing my screen and give it over to Keith here, who's going to get us started in our demo.
Hi all, and welcome to our demo. Thank you for taking the time to visit us today. And I will begin for the demo if I can find the share button.
Should be just up top.
Yep.
Keith.
Cheers. All right, can you see my screen?
Yep, all good on our end.
All right, perfect. Okay, so I'll be giving you an overview of Entuity as John's just explained. Now, what I normally do when I talk about Entuity is I think about the outcomes. And the first thing I'll show you is this dashboard here, which is your global sites and paths overview. So this is showing me the global health of my estate. I can select a site. For example, here I've selected the United Kingdom, and I can see the health of that site. So it's green, that means everything is good. I can also see any incidents that have been raised for that site. On the right-hand side, I have the key applications that my team depends on. So Office 365. Without communication, there's very little productivity that we can do. So what I've done there is selected Office 365, and I can see the actual path that users take when they're reaching the Office 365 service. If I zoom in, I can actually see the end-to-end latency from source to destination. So this gives me a very good indication of how that Office 365 application is performing. And at the bottom of the screen over here, you'll see the incidents list. So these are the critical incidents that I'm monitoring for my global estate to make sure that everything is running as it should and is healthy. So this is where I normally start, giving you that global overview of your entire estate. This is a geographical map, so that uses a Google Map integration. If I wanted to see the links between those sites, I could actually select those. And these are the technologies that Entuity will automatically discover to show you connectivity between sites and between devices. Now, the next thing I want to show you is how vendor agnostic Entuity is. So Entuity is one of Entuity's key features, and the USP is that it's vendor agnostic. A lot of tools out there need you to configure your own polars. You need to define your own metrics to collect, whereas Entuity automatically does this for you. If I move on to another dashboard, my device list dashboard over there, I can see all the assets that I'm monitoring. You can see that I have AWS in there, Azure. I have a Cisco router here. I have a server device. I have a wireless controller. So regardless of the technology or the vendor, Entuity will automatically discover these assets and start monitoring them for you. So we are also technology agnostic. If I select AWS as an example, I have a dashboard here that shows me all the regions, and I can select a region and see the block storage in there. I can see the root tables. If I select another region, I see the same information, but for that specific region. So it makes it really easy to drill down into assets and see the detailed information that you need for those assets. Another thing to mention is that these dashboards are customizable. So you could actually customize these dashboards to see the information that you need. And at the bottom of this dashboard, I have my incidents list. So if I was responsible for AWS infrastructure and I was interested in the zones or the regions and the devices or VMs in that region, then I could configure a dashboard similar to this one, where I'd log in and see the information that's important to me. And that's another key feature of Entuity that we'll talk about later: customizable, configurable dashboards. So you can create and configure dashboards that are important to the work that you're doing. They will provide the information that you need for your day-to-day job. In other words, not every user of the tool will see the same dashboards. You could configure them to see the same dashboards, or you could configure and customize the dashboards to your own use cases. Let's take a look at another dashboard. If I was interested in the OS services running in my estate, I could select the OS services dashboard. And from here, I see all the OS services that are running in my estate that Entuity is automatically monitoring. For example, I am monitoring the OS services on this particular demo system that we're using. And I can see that I've got the Entuity service running, so the Entuity application is running, and I could drill down into that. And I can see that it's automatically started. So if my server reboots for any reason, Entuity will automatically restart. So if you have a power outage in your estate, Entuity can be configured to restart automatically and continue monitoring. So that reduces the downtime and increases visibility of your network. At the top, you'll notice a breadcrumb. So right now I'm in a subcomponent of a server. I can use that breadcrumb to navigate. And if I go to my Microsoft Windows Server, this is the operating system that Entuity is running on. And I can see the CPU utilization, memory utilization, and other metrics. I could also show the hardware for this particular machine. And if you notice, the breadcrumb at the top has gone back one, and I'm now looking at the hardware for that particular machine. So Entuity will do your hardware monitoring and OS monitoring as well. We'll also do storage and server monitoring, in addition to the network devices that we'll monitor. Another example of a useful dashboard is your end-of-life dashboard. This is something that I've configured on this system because a lot of my customers have been asking me about end of life. It's something that's important to them. And the system can be configured to collect data from any source, whether it's an API or you have a seed file with the information that you need to feed into the system. You can configure the system and present that in our dashboards. So in my end-of-life dashboard here, I can see the name of the devices, the manufacturer, model, the end of service contract, the end of hardware support, end of software support, and I can see the number of days until that support ends, until the service contract ends. All of these are out of date, so probably need to get in touch with Cisco and HP. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is proactive issue resolution. So we've seen how Entuity gives you a vendor agnostic view of your network, your global network, where you could have a distributed network with assets in different countries, different regions, and that's all consolidated into a single pane of glass. But one key thing that John mentioned is proactive issue resolution. So you want to identify the issues that you have within your network, and Entuity does this using advanced analytics, intelligent alerts, and it helps you to identify and resolve issues before they impact your business. Now, if we're talking about advanced analytics, one thing that Entuity does is it will do your continuous discovery and data collection. Once you've onboarded your devices, whether manually or using our auto discovery tool, where you automatically discover your devices, and Entuity will continuously rediscover those assets, find changes in them. For example, if you have a line card that fails, Entuity will alert you on it, and then you replace that line card, and Entuity will automatically rediscover that line card, and you have that within your managed inventory. So that's one key advantage of Entuity. We're automatically rediscovering your assets without you having to spend time and resources to reconfigure your pollers or collectors. Another thing that Entuity will do for you is your performance monitoring. If I look at this device, so I've selected that hyperlink for that device and I've drilled down, Entuity will continue to automatically discover information about these devices, as well as polling them at a scheduled interval. I can see my CPU utilization, memory utilization, latency, SNMP response time. So that's my health of monitoring if it's an SNMP managed device. I could also drill down into my ports, for example, and see the interfaces that I have on this device. But most importantly, I can drill down into resources and I can see the processors that are on that device, memory, modules, power supplies, sensors, if it had any temperature sensors on it, I'd see those in there, fans and router buffers. And all of this is being collected automatically without you having to configure pollers, and Entuity will do all of the heavy lifting for you and present that information in a meaningful manner where it's normalized across different vendors. Okay. The next thing that I want to look at is predictive analytics. I know this was one of the things that we had in our agenda for today. Now, one thing that Entuity does is it uses historical data and trend analysis to predict potential future issues. For example, it can forecast when network traffic might exceed capacity and allow you to take proactive measures. Let's see if I've got an example of a dashboard here. Okay, I've got a dashboard here, which when I navigate to a device, I can see ports with predictive analytics. If I select an interface, let's pick that one there. So in this dashboard, I've defined a dashlet that gives me my list of interfaces on that particular device. I can see the inbound speed and the outbound speed, the inbound utilization and outbound utilization. And on the right-hand side, I can see the utilization prediction. So this particular interface has a bandwidth of 8 megabits per second, and it's going to reach 40.3% inbound utilization in 6 months. So that allows me to plan for capacity. If I see that that number there is going to be higher than the tolerated capacity, I can then take predictive measures or take preventive measures to alleviate that issue, that situation. I'll also be looking at some of the capacity planning reports that we have in Entuity, but we'll see that later on in this demonstration. Actually, this might be a good point to get into that one. Okay, so we've seen the dashboard. If I then get into my reports, Entuity has over 100 reports out of the box. And these are in different categories. If I get into my planning reports, I can see all the planning, all the capacity planning and trend reports that are out of the box. If I wanted to, I could configure or customize my own reports using our drag and drop report builder. In this example, let me look at the device memory capacity planning heat map report. So you get a form when you select the report and you can put in the parameters. Entuity is view-based, where you can group devices by location, technology type, name. These views can be dynamic or they can be drag and drop, where you drag and drop devices into these views. So these are groupings of devices. When you run your reports, you can actually select what group of devices you want to run that report against, and you will get information about that particular group of devices. In this case, I'm going to run against my network, which gives me all the devices that I have been given access to by the administrator. Running that report, I can see here what my capacity planning summary is. And at the top, I see the devices that are listed as critical. So this gives me an indication of what devices I need to focus on. So that's another way to do capacity planning within Entuity. Let's go back to the home page. Right. The next thing that Entuity will give you is intelligent alerts. So you will get your real-time alerts where Entuity provides you alerts about unusual or critical events. And those events are correlated into incidents. I have an incidents dashboard here. So for my group of devices in my network, which is all the devices that I have been given permission to see by the administrator, I can see all the incidents. Again, this is role-based, so the administrator can define what alerts I have access to. So you can see we have a number of incidents from my network. The key thing about Entuity's incidents is that you can control the behavior of incidents by setting thresholds. We have an event management system that allows you to configure behavior based on criteria that's met by that particular alert. So as an example, if you have an alert coming in for service traffic is high, and this is happening at your headquarters for a critical service, you want that to take priority. Within the event management system, you could actually augment this incident so it has a higher severity. You can also send it out by email if you want to. You can integrate with an SMS broker or WhatsApp and send those alerts out. You can integrate with your ITSM tools and ticketing tools as well. So that alert is automatically sent to those third-party solutions and a ticket is automatically generated. One thing that's of interest when we look at incidents is if I go and look at the incident details, I talked about correlation of events into incidents. To reduce noise, what Entuity does is it will correlate all the events pertaining to a problem into a single incident. For example, that network outage on that particular device has had 5 events. So we've had 5 events, 3 network outages. So we had a network outage 3 times, and that recovered 2 times. And all of that has been correlated into a single incident. So that reduces the amount of noise in the incident's dashboard, allowing you to focus on the problem. If you wanted to see a list of events, you could do that as well. Now to find my events dashboard. And from here, I can see all the events that would have contributed to incidents being opened or closed. But then again, it's really difficult to focus on problems and situations and solve issues when you have thousands of events to look at, which is why best practice within Entuity is to focus on your incidents. This will correlate events into a single incident and allow you to focus on that particular problem. Another thing that we see with Entuity events is root cause analysis. So that's another feature that Entuity has. When we look at network outages, you could get a site outage where there are 1,000 devices, and that means you've got 1,000 alerts coming in. Entuity's root cause analysis allows you to correlate all those outages into a single one. So we identify the cause of the outage and we'll present that in the incident details. So it'll show you how many items have been impacted and what has caused that. I'll have an example of this. If I move to my root cause analysis dashboard, so that's another dashboard that I've configured to give me that information. And within this dashboard, I can see that my London site and Johannesburg sites are down. They're not reachable because there's been an outage. And that outage looks like it was caused by that interface there going down. When I look at my incidents on the right-hand side at the bottom, I can see that there's been a configuration management change on a device, and that device is PC Core 01. Okay. Now looking at the incident details, I can see in here that there's been a scheduled change. So somebody's placed a change request. In this particular case, my system is integrated with ServiceNow. So when there was a network outage or there's a configuration management change before the outage, Entuity raised an alert to let me know that there's a configuration management change. And then Entuity, through its integration with ServiceNow, has looked up a valid change request for that window and identified that there is a valid change request. So this was a valid change. Now, when I look at the network outage incident and I look at the details, in here, as we saw earlier, I can see the number of events that have come in correlated into a single incident. And most importantly, I can see that there's 7 nodes that are unreachable. And I can see where the issue is. So this allows me to focus on that particular device to resolve that outage. Now, if I pick the most recent network outage event from this incident, I can actually see the impacted devices. So I know that PE01, my Johannesburg router, which is down here, my London HQ router 1, I can see that these are impacted by that outage. So this allows me to focus on resolving the issue with the device that has caused the outage, where the outage has occurred. The advantage to this is that you reduce your mean time to recover and repair. I no longer need to troubleshoot all of those devices to understand what's happened with them and if they are the root cause, and Entuity is automatically doing this for me. Now, I'm going to go and bring that port back up. Entuity also has a configuration management utility or tool that allows you to make configuration changes to your devices from the user interface. This is role-based, so we do have role-based access control. Not every user will have this functionality. You can decide which users can actually make configuration changes to your devices or your estate from the Entuity tool. So what we'll see in a few moments is that interface will come up and those sites will become reachable again. Another thing that I have in this dashboard is an application path. So I have an application that's going through my network from source to destination. But when there was an outage, what happened is that application failed, and I can see that my application is no longer reachable. So this is our SurePath tool or module. What SurePath does is it identifies the path from source to destination, just like we saw at the start when I showed you the very first global overview dashboard. With our Office 365 application, I'm using the same feature here to identify the path from source to destination and get alerts on this, and I can see the changes in that path. So when this network recovers from that outage, which should take about 60 to 120 seconds, that path will be repopulated with the actual path that my application is taking through my network. Okay, so we've seen Entuity from a global level where you can see the health of your global estate. We've drilled down into assets. We've looked at a device and looked at automatic discovery and polling of devices. We've also looked at our incidents and configuration management and how Entuity can actually identify configuration changes or any alerts on your devices like network outages and give you insightful alerts. We've also seen how you can leverage this to integrate with other tools and have some level of automation. We'll talk about automation in a few moments. Okay, as you can see, this network is starting to recover. And from this particular map, if I wanted to, I could actually drill down into one of these links to see the details. It's important to note that our topology maps present you with live information. I've drilled down into the particular link, and I can see that we're going from London HQ router 2 to PE01. And I can also see the interfaces that connect those devices and the actual status of those interfaces. Another important thing to note is you can also see the technology that Entuity is automatically used to identify that connectivity and present that in the map. In this case, we're using CDP. If I wanted to drill down into each of those interfaces, for example, if I wanted to drill down into FA01, I could just click on that and that would drill down into that particular interface, allowing me to start troubleshooting from one dashboard that gave me my global sites, configuration management alerts, network outage alerts, letting me know what the root cause of an outage is, and then drill down from the map itself into a component within the tool. Okay. So another thing that Entuity will do is prioritization and escalation. Entuity prioritizes alerts based on severity and business impact. And I've mentioned that you do have control over the prioritization of these alerts. For example, with the event management system, you can dynamically change alert severity using rules or incidents, or for incidents, you could use triggers. If you remember, incidents are fed by events. So an incident is a collection of events that indicate a certain problem. So you've got complete control over the behavior of the system in that area. Another key thing to note about incidents, which I touched on briefly, is the ability to escalate. Within the event management system, you can configure rules or triggers. I don't have a lot of incidents there. I'll go back to my network. So you can configure rules based on certain criteria. And when an incident is raised, you could determine, or you could configure how long you want to wait before an escalation takes place. So for example, that virtual machine guest memory is high. You might have an out of hours team that's responding to alerts, but this might be a temporary situation. Entuity also gives you the ability to set a wait time, or it's a delay of how long to wait before actually raising that incident and forwarding it to third-party tools, or sending it by email, for example, to notify your out of hours team or your on-call teams. So that's another feature that you'll find with Entuity. Okay. Now, the next thing that I want to talk about is flow. So we're talking about how much information the system will collect and present to you in a meaningful way. And you want to use these meaningful insights to get a better understanding of how your estate is performing and how your network is performing. Now, with flow, Entuity gives you the ability to characterize the traffic that is going through your network or traversing your devices, and help you identify bottlenecks or anything that is using up your bandwidth, consuming your bandwidth. As an example, if there was a denial of service attack, you could quite easily identify an unusual source of traffic or destination for traffic that's consuming your bandwidth. And once that is identified, you can, with the tool, as I've shown you earlier, isolate that site using our configuration management utility, where you find that site and shut down that particular interface, which isolates that site from the rest of your network. But the key thing to take away is the amount of data that Entuity is collecting. So from a single platform, you get a single pane of glass, and Entuity will automatically collect all of this data for you and present it in a meaningful way for you to take action. And you can be proactive about taking actions before these situations impact your day-to-day business. Okay. Now, the next thing that I'm going to touch on, I hope I'm not going too quickly here. I have a long list of things to cover that John has sent me, and I'm trying to make sure that I've covered everything. Now, the next thing I'm going to talk about is automated workflows. So we've seen this dashboard here that allows me to shut down an interface. So as opposed to me logging into that device and shutting down that interface manually, Entuity has given me the ability to automatically shut the tool down, that interface down, by right-clicking on that particular interface, going to my configuration management and shutting it down. There are many other things that you can do with configuration management. We provide you with a framework that you can extend and add to as required. So you're not constrained to these items that you see here, which is port description, port down, port up, or port VLAN, where you set the VLAN of an interface. You could actually add more tasks, and these will be presented in the UI as menu items that you can run from here. Okay. we'll talk a little bit more about this when we start looking at integrations in terms of automation, because one thing that I think is quite important when you think about automation in your estate, you have multiple tools that are in an ecosystem and they all need to work together and in harmony. And Entuity has tools that allow you to do this. So the first thing that we'll do is collect that data, process it for you, and give you some automation tests that you can run within the tool. But then with our integrations, you also have the ability to then forward information that has been processed to a third-party tool, and that tool then takes action based on the input that it receives from Entuity. So Entuity acts as a source of truth. The reverse can be true, as we've seen in ServiceNow, where an alert was sent and we identified that that particular alert was a scheduled change. But what if it wasn't a scheduled change? In that case, you could configure Entuity to identify whether a change was scheduled or not. And if it's a malicious change that has not been scheduled, from the event management system, you could actually process that alert and identify the device that has been changed and use the event management system to trigger a configuration management task that restores the configuration to a previous state. And that's something that you can do with the framework that we provide. The next thing I'm going to talk about is the reporting. So I think this is something else that's useful when we talk about automated workflows. A number of customers that I speak to tell me how they spend hours generating reports. Reports as simple as inventory, where they've got to collect information from multiple sources and they might have these in a spreadsheet. Then they've got to normalize that information and try and make sense of it. And that takes hours of prep work and hours of sorting that data out, taking these teams away from being innovative and being productive. With Entuity, what we provide is a drag and drop report builder. So for example, if I get into my list of devices, I can see all the assets that I have. We can see that the data is normalized. So regardless of the asset that I'm looking at, I can see similar information. If I drag a single device into my Dropbox, I can start building a report. And I find this approach a lot easier. You could do it another way where you get into the report builder and then identify the metrics that you want. But what I find much easier is drilling down into a device that you want to use as an example and drag the metrics that you want. For example, I've dragged the name into our Dropbox, which is a collection of the attributes that I want to report on. I could also grab the root type or rooted device type attribute. So that's the type of attribute. And I could grab the manufacturer and the model number. And for good measure, I'll drop in the version as well. Once my metrics are in the Dropbox and I have a device that I can test against, I can then navigate to my report builder. You'll notice the reports I spoke about earlier. We've got 100 plus out of the box reports in different categories. We also have a user-defined reports category. This is where your user-defined reports will go. Although you could configure these to be in their own folder for ease of administration and management when you have large numbers of reports. So my report builder is at the bottom of the page. If I click on report builder, I can then choose the type of report that I want to build. The different types of reports. I could have time series charts. I could have an inventory table, which is what I want right now because I want to report on my assets in a single table. I could have a multi-chart table where I'll have charts and tabular information about the assets that I'm reporting against. So I could have a time series table that gives me time series rows for particular metrics. For example, if I'm looking at CPU and memory over time and I want to analyze that, or I want to email this out to a colleague or somebody that's asked about the performance of a system. We'll also have composite reports where you might want to report on multiple components that are different types. You might want to report on devices and their subcomponents, CPUs, memory, and fans. You can build a composite report that will have the device information in a sub-report and your subcomponents in other sub-reports. Now, selecting my inventory table, that's my report template, and I can import those metrics from the dashboard, from the Dropbox. I can see my model number, manufacturer, the type of device, and the display name. I can move these columns. So I will move my display name up because I want to sort by device name. And I can have my manufacturer, model, and let's move that type down. You can change the names of the columns, so you can actually edit these. And I can now test that report against that device. You'll notice the device I had in my Dropbox is now used for this testing selection. So if I go and preview that report, I can see the name of the device, the manufacturer, model number, version, and type. And then I can go and publish this report. I'll give my report a name. And publish it. Once that report is published, it will now reside in my user-defined reports folder that I showed you earlier. Now let's find that report. There it is. Once the template has been saved and you've defined your report and it has the information that you need, you can then select the report and run it on demand. So for example, I could run this now against my network, and it now gives me all that information. So I've spent about 2 minutes defining a report template that I can now run as required. And I could share this and give other users access to that report. So that saves you a lot of time in gathering information and putting this information into an Excel and trying to process that information. And Entuity will automatically do all of this for you.
Hey, Keith, while we're on reports, we had a question come through, was hoping you could address.
Okay.
The question is, can you report on end-of-life info to allow a forward view of what support and hardware is expiring and when?
Yes. So we looked at the end-of-life dashboard. What Entuity will do is any information that you get into our system, so whether we've polled this information or you used user-defined polling or REST API polling to get that information into the system, once it's in the system, you can report on it in exactly the same way that I'm reporting now. So that is possible, yes.
Great. Thank you for
Thanks,
answering
John.
that.
Brilliant. Now, carrying on with the automation of reports, I have the report that I've defined. The other thing that you can do is you can actually schedule these reports. So it's taken me 2 to 3 minutes to define the report. Previously, it was taking me maybe an hour or two every week to gather the information and sort it out in an Excel. But I have a weekly stand-up call with my team every Monday morning, and I want this report to be sent out to me before that meeting. So Entuity has a report scheduler where for that report definition, I could actually specify what group of assets I want to report against. the format of the report, whether it's in PDF, HTML, XML, Excel, for example, or Word. So you've got that flexibility as well. I could then define a schedule of how often I want this report to be sent out. And the schedule is very customizable as well. So I could have a calendar occurrence where I could specify days of the month, for example, when the report should be run. So that same report that you saw me building, that report will be run automatically and emailed out to you on a set date. And I could specify the email to send it out to. So this could be sent out to myself, or I could have it sent out to a distribution list or a select number of users. So that's another useful thing to have when we're thinking about automation. I think it's important to think about the other tasks that we might be doing, administrative tasks like reporting, as opposed to making configuration changes to devices or reacting to alerts in an automated way. But there are other tasks as well that take up our time. And by automating these tasks, we actually free up our time to be more productive and innovative, to start thinking about how we solve other problems. But one thing that I forgot to show you when I was looking at our root cause analysis dashboard, and we saw that alert coming in for changes, for configuration changes, and it showed me that there was an active change window. This is actually integrated with ServiceNow. So within ServiceNow, unfortunately, my session has expired, but within ServiceNow, that particular device does have a change window. So you could have a change team that manages your change requests and approves them. They will do their work in ServiceNow, and then Entuity integrates with ServiceNow to check for those change windows. And it doesn't just have to be a configuration change. It could be anything. Any data that you want to collect from a third-party system using an API, and Entuity will be able to do that for you within the event management system. If it was a matter of data collection, where you have devices or systems that provide information through an API, and Entuity's user-defined REST API poller could gather that information for you as well. So you can configure the system to gather information from other tools if you wanted to. And once that information is in Entuity's database, you can report on it, just as you would all the information that Entuity would collect out of the box. Okay. Now, the other thing I want to talk about is customizable dashboards. So you've heard me mention that I've configured some of these dashboards. A number of them are out of the box, but I've configured some that provide the information that I need. For example, this global sites with paths, I've configured this dashboard so I can focus on the information that matters to me. Within Entuity, you can create a dashboard from scratch, so you can build your own dashboard. But what I tend to do is, if I have a dashboard that has information similar to what I'm looking for, or I like some of the information in the dashlets because they meet my requirements. So for example, I could have this dashboard here. So the dashboard is that entire page, and the dashlets are the sections within it that provide the information. So if I wanted to have a similar dashboard, I could simply duplicate that dashboard, select which users have access to it. I could give them access where they see it in a drop-down list, or I could favorite it so it appears at the top with the other dashboards that you've seen. Okay. So it's forcing me to select an icon there so I can easily identify that dashboard. Right. So I had my path discovery dashlet here. I could delete that and say I'm interested in something else. I might be interested in incidents, for example, or device status. So I could simply add another dashlet into my dashboard, and I've now configured the UI to present me with the information that I need. And you could test it out and see what information you have before you save that dashboard.
This is great. Thanks, Keith. Time flies when you're having fun, and I know we've got about 10 minutes left here before we wrap up, so I wanted to leave some time for Q&A. Are you okay if we get into that, Keith?
Yes, definitely.
Perfect. Alrighty, so we had a question here that came in from Paul. Is there any two-way integration, for example, with BMC, that you could see alerts coming from BNC appearing in Entuity as a single pane of glass?
Yes, with Entuity's API, and we also support webhooks, you could get information coming in from other systems, including BMC. What I tend to see a lot of my customers doing is they'll have Entuity as a source of truth for the network estate. When an alert comes in, that alert is sent out to BMC tools, and we could also collect some information from there and enrich our alerts. But that is possible.
Excellent, thank you. And then a follow-up question to that. Can Entuity prioritize alerts based on business criticality of the application that Entuity is monitoring?
Yes, as I've explained, when we're looking at the root cause or the configuration management change alerts, we have an event management system that allows you to configure behavior for alerts. So as alerts come in, you can look at the location. For example, you can look at the device type or the application that's dependent on that particular alert and change the criticality of it.
Excellent. Then another question from Paul we have here. When a destination is not reachable, but there are elements of the network path that use public networks, is Intuity able to identify and show those issues that are likely somewhere in the public network?
Yes, if we're talking about root cause analysis, which is what I explained earlier, so Intuity will identify the hops to that particular destination. And if there is an outage, then a network outage alert would be raised against that particular um, outage. What has caused the outage, that root cause of the outage. So Intuity can do that. Now, if we're looking at shore path, which is our application path monitoring, we will also identify how far the traffic gets before it's actually interrupted because of an outage.
Great. There's some great questions we have here. If those of you that are tuning in live have any questions, feel free to drop those into the Q&A thread we have here. Also, prior to the webinar, we did ask if anybody had questions, so we do have a few of those. So Keith, are there any compatibility issues with legacy systems connecting to Intuity? And is there anything you can share regarding the scalability of performance of those systems and how well the solution scales with the growth of the network?
Okay, so as you've seen, I looked at the end of life dashboard, and some of my devices were well past their end of life. So Intuity will support your legacy devices automatically out of the box. So there are no issues there with supporting legacy equipment. In terms of scalability and performance, Entuity is designed to scale seamlessly. So you can scale up by adding resources like CPU and memory, or you can scale out by adding more polars to cover a wider estate.
Great, thank
So in an example where, sorry, John,
No, go
in
ahead.
a,
Keep going.
in an example where you have an acquisition, for example, and you're growing by acquisition, you can simply add polars to that site and then connect those to your consolidation server, giving you that single pane of glass.
Perfect. Thank you. We have one question here asking, what are the new features that can be seen in version 22 of Entuity software? I'm happy to answer that one. So we recently had some new features in version 22, including some monitoring enhancements for AWS and Azure, configuration management and monitoring enhancements as well as enhancements for maintenance window alerting. We've also added some capabilities regarding user-defined thresholds, vulnerability monitoring, and web application management. We reviewed each of these new features in detail in our recent Entuity version 22 overview video. I'm dropping the link to that in the chat there, so feel free to use that link if you want to take a deeper dive into the latest version of Entuity. Another question we have here, Keith, is what are some of the specific recommendations for deployment of Entuity?
Okay, when you're deploying an enterprise solution like Entuity, which will do a lot of the heavy lifting for you, the first thing that you need to think about is planning. I think planning and design. You need to look at your estate, think about how many devices you might be managing, think about where those devices reside, and look at the resources that we have online. So we have server sizing, recommendations on our on our help center. Once you've gathered that information, then the next step is download the software and install it. And Entuity has an installation utility, so it's really easy to install. And once it's installed, you can automatically onboard your devices using auto discovery. Another thing that we provide is services. So we do have a solution architects team that can work with you to design your solution and deploy it. And they'll also support you throughout the life cycle of the solution if you wanted them to. So these are services that we offer as well.
Great, thank you. I think we have time for maybe one more question here. Keith, can you share with us regarding support and maintenance, what kind of customer support is available for Entuity users?
Okay, so for Entuity users, you get access to our help desk. They'll assist you with issue resolution, and with valid support, you get access to the patches. So any new patches that are released, will release patches quarterly, or if there's a vulnerability identified with third parties, for example, we could release emergency patches to cater for that. But normally would have patches quarterly. So you get access to those through our support. And also you get access to the latest versions of Entuity. So if we release a new version, which we do annually, you get access to that version as well. But our support team is very responsive. I had the figures. I think for critical alerts, will respond within an hour. For high criticality, will respond within 4 hours. For medium, it's 8 hours, and low criticality is 24 hours. So those are really good response times. In addition to that, you could also purchase premium support where you get direct access to a solution architect who will help you with your day-to-day configuration of the solution.
Excellent, thank you. So we are coming up here on time. Do want to make sure that we end in a timely fashion so everyone can get along to their next meeting. You've heard a lot about Entuity software on our webinar. We'll be in touch with the recording of this webinar, and feel free to start a conversation with us if there's any questions or things that you want to learn about that we didn't address here. We also understand that it's sometimes helpful to hear from some users of Entuity. We do partner with G2, which is a software review site. So I did just drop in the chat a link to our reviews website if you want to take a look at see what users are saying about Entuity. Again, thank you all very much for joining us today. Thank you very much, Keith, for your time in walking us through the solution. And we look forward to seeing you again on our next online event. Thanks, everyone, and take care.
Thanks all for joining.
Bye.
Take care.